Hello, and welcome everyone to the Point Loma Church podcast, where we are exploring different spiritual practices centered around 6 different Christian traditions. My name is Sarah Butterfield, and I am the Director of Children and Family Ministry.
And I am Ryan Silvia, and I am the Director of Youth and Young Adults. And this is our 3rd week on our Spiritual Practices series, and this week we will be talking about holiness.
Holiness. What is holiness?
Well, the big thing I wanted to start out talking about, holiness is a personal spiritual practice. This is not a spiritual practice where you go around policing all of the other activities of people around you. It is something internal. It's something you do to get closer to God. What do you think, Sarah?
I think so too. That's a good way of putting it. I think we can be tempted to think of holiness as a list of rules to follow, as a way to perform our faith, when really it's not that at all. It is more, how are we being set apart? And how are we becoming more and more like Jesus? And so this is really like habits of holy living, those kinds of things. And when we were getting ready for this podcast, we came across some great quotes. Do you want to share yours?
Yeah. So the big one that really jumped out to me when we're looking at the word holy, right? It's used all throughout Bible, but throughout the Bible. But the biggest person that we see described as holy is God, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see lots of different words that God is described by. We see justice and mercy, but none of these words are repeated. See, the only word that gets repeated 3 times to describe God is holy. God is holy, holy, holy. So when we look at that word holy, I think the best place to look is to look at God, to look at what are the attributes that God pours out, what is the things that God wants to see in us celebrated. And so when we look at holiness, I think the best thing to do is just to try and draw closer to God.
That's right. I love that. And J.I. Packer has a really great quote in his book, Rediscovering Holiness. And he says, "Holiness is the object of our new creation. We are born again so that we may grow up into Christ-likeness." And this really indicates that it's a lifelong process.
Exactly. I love that idea. Holiness is not a switch that once you read the right Bible verse, you get it. It's something that you're going to be pursuing your entire life, whether you're 220 or 200. I think holiness is a really exciting spiritual practice that you can always constantly be seeking.
That's right. And so I love how Alan Kreider, he has a book called The Patient Ferment of the Early Church. And he talks about how the growth of the early church was not attributed to any special strategy, not knocking on doors or passing out tracts or the Roman road, if you're familiar with that. There wasn't a strategic part of it. It was actually just the way that early Christians were living their lives. Invited others to know more. And so they lived so differently, and those differences pointed to the gospel. Really, their acts of living were subversive in their day. And so they kind of looked like, at the time, financial stewardship and simplicity. Back in the early church days, abandoning the magic arts. And having patience instead of resorting to violence. And so this really prompts the question, because our culture is so much different than that of the early church. It prompts the question, what subversive acts do we engage in that run counter to our culture, that kind of set us apart?
Well, I really like that, Sarah. Before we jump into specific acts, what that subversive acts, I can't even say it right, is kind of a big phrase. Can you help us kind of understand what that phrase means a little bit more?
I think it's just like a radical difference,
Yeah.
countercultural difference.
I like that a lot. It's challenging the idea that this is what we all have to do to fit in. And when you take a subversive act and lean it into who Jesus' holiness is or who God's holiness is, I think we start to see something really beautiful and really powerful. So you listed a couple really wonderful subversive acts that I love. Just simple for our teens at school. Are you brave enough to stand up when your friends are all teasing each other? When somebody shows up with that new haircut, are you brave enough to say, "Hey, I actually like that you shaved one side of your head. That looks really cool, man. Like, I'm glad that you did something different. That's really, really fun." And I've never seen somebody do that before. I think, just a simple sentence changing somebody's perspective on, "Oh, I feel sad. I feel bad about the way that I look," can be so beautiful. And sharing that single holy moment with them, I think is really powerful.
Absolutely. And I think this is also why these spiritual practices in particular can be very difficult for teens, for tweens, because there is that fear of standing out.
Yeah.
There is that fear of looking too different. You know, it's always
Absolutely.
a struggle when you're developing your identity to be different, but not so different that you stand out in a bad way. And so you're right. It does take bravery to be the one to stand up and be like, hey, I think his haircut looks nice, or whatever, or just do the thing that's going to make you stand out, but that is going to be loving towards that person.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree.
So something that I think is a really great way to explain holiness, especially to younger children, and this is something that the Lenten weekly devotional is based around, is this idea of what does it look like to be on Jesus's team? So it's like being a follower of Jesus is like being on a special team. And, team members, they all wear the same jersey and they all follow special rules.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really thinking about, well, how would somebody know that I am on Jesus's team? What does that look like? How can we act that in ways that show that we belong to Jesus? And this can be a great conversation starter.
Yeah.
Because I bet kids have some ideas already of what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
Possibly being kind, being forgiving, helping others, especially when it's safer not to, when it's safer to blend in with the crowd.
Yeah.
Those are all things that make us stand out as Jesus followers.
I think that's awesome. A great one I had on my list was being quick to apologize. I think especially in our day and age, there always has to be a reason for you to apologize, or I have to know what I did wrong. And I think there are some instances that when especially a friend comes to us with a hurt, a pain, or something that we may be involved in, just being the one that's quick to say, you know what, I'm really sorry. I know I played a role in that. I don't know that I necessarily did it on purpose, but just being able to say, I see you, I feel you, and I care about you enough to say, you know what, I'm sorry that happened that way, and I want to make this better, so let's fix it. And I think that's just a great way to show God's love, God's grace, and God's holiness to somebody who may not experience that regularly.
Yeah, absolutely. Being quick to apologize would absolutely set you apart in this day and age. So thinking about things that are totally countercultural, I think especially as a parent of kids who are like to be busy with activities, I think instituting a day of rest, a day where we do nothing, dare I say it, a day of Sabbath is so radically countercultural.
It really is.
And I think that doing that is, first of all, a tall order. And I understand that as a mom so completely. And but what we can do is we can try to intentionally carve out a set amount of time. And if the whole day seems absolutely impossible to you, or if it is currently impossible to you right now with your schedule right now, be intentional about carving out at least half a day or some hours where we are just going to be together with no planned activities. We're just going to be together and hang out and eat a meal together, especially if that feels difficult for you with sports schedules and music and after school and all the things. Trying to be intentional to carve out that space, to be together, to rest together, to play together, is like, I would highly, highly encourage that as something to try in this Lenten season. And I think I have tried to do this in my own life, and it has been really enriching for me. And I think setting that tone for the family and for the kids can be really beneficial as well.
I love that, Sarah. I want to lean in on that phrase intentional that you brought up, because I know some of our parents may feel guilty spending an entire day or even a couple of hours, quote unquote, doing nothing. But when you lean into this intentionality, we're going to take this time and we're going to choose to prioritize our mental health, right? I like reclaiming actions. People say, oh, I had a lazy Saturday where I did nothing. Or no, we took an intentional Saturday afternoon as our family to sit down and enjoy an episode of Bluey together. Something silly, something fun, but it's an intentional afternoon where we're putting pause on all the crazy things that are going on in our lives just to say, wait, we want to leave space, one, for each other, but more importantly, we want to leave space for God. We want to leave space for Him to speak into our lives, to celebrate, to do the wonderful things. And if we're constantly go, doing things and trying to fill our lives with space, I think we miss out on those kind of wonderful God moments.
Yeah. And also carving out that time really allows for spontaneity.
That's a good
to come
$10
up,
word. hard.
right, because you can't really be spontaneous when you have everything so scheduled, and so it's nice to just have a day of white space on the calendar
Yeah,
where there is room for spontaneity. If we're all together and all of a sudden we think, oh hey, the tide is low right now, maybe we could all go. It's like, oh hey, we're all available because we're doing nothing
I
today.
love that. I love that.
Is a
Yeah.
good practice to have.
I love that. Along with your intentional space, your intentional quiet time, there's a few things. If you're one of those that just like, nope, can't sit, can't do nothing, have to have an agenda, have to have a plan. I love that for you. A few things that you can just do in those times. Maybe it's just at dinner time if you don't have a whole day. Sit down and do a kindness check, right? Have everybody around the table share. Did I add more joy to the world than I took out today? Did I share more kind words than I had sarcastic jokes with my friends?
Mm.
Right? I think it's a great dinner discussion topic. What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just laughing at the more kind words than sarcastic words because I'm thinking of my own family.
And I'm just as guilty.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think it's good to set those habits of self-reflection,
Yeah.
and of doing it together as a family, and having space for that is good, and can remind us and inspire us to act in ways that look like Jesus would have
Yeah.
acted.
I love
And I
that.
do think, for the record, I do think Jesus had a sense of humor.
100%.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. But
Because joy and delight originates with the creator of the universe.
yeah,
And so there's no way that Jesus didn't have a sense of humor.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I think it's important that our sense of humor uplifts more often than it tears down for sure.
For sure. And when you are a tween or a teenager, navigating that line and discerning that line takes practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Kind of along those same lines, I have the daily friendship challenge. Did I meet or get to know somebody better today? Was I intentional about how I listened to somebody, or did I just wait for my turn to talk? I think that's one
Mm.
of my favorite. When you sit down with somebody, are you, oh, I picked up on that word, I'm going to share a story from my life, or did you wait till they finish talking and process everything they shared? I know I'm super guilty of that.
That takes practice too. We read a book with the Women's Bible Study years ago by Adam McHugh called The Listening Life. And in
Ooh,
it, he talks about how when you're in conversation with somebody else, you should imagine that there's a red arrow pointing to the other person. And your job as a listener is to keep that arrow pointed on the other person. So when
yeah.
they're done talking, you're not all of a sudden going to like, me too, or whatever. You're maybe asking a follow-up question or saying, oh, how interesting, tell me more about that. And so that is
Mm,
a skill that, we practice through our whole lives, right?
yeah,
I mean, adults need to practice this too, but that's
absolutely.
a great way to love like Jesus, is to listen well.
I think
Yeah.
that's a great one.
An idea that I had for the younger ones, if you'd like to pick this one, is to do a holy living jar. And so this would be just like, keep a jar or some kind of container, and on it you can write, if on a few slips of paper, habits like praying, telling the truth, sharing, encouraging someone, being patient. And then you can just each day have your kid grab one blindly and challenge them to do that day. It's like, oh, you picked share. Okay, so be on the lookout for what you can share.
I love
And then
that.
to be able to circle back at dinner time. Okay, were you able to complete your challenge today? That can be just an easy way to practice being set apart
I
for
love
God.
that.
Yeah.
I love that. And it's, of course we use little vehicles or tools to get us started, but I love that these are all little tools to get us to practice these things regularly, right? Of
Hmm.
course we want to be sharing and, getting all the love and the joy out regularly. But if we start with a simple little jar, I think it really, really helps to kind of get that ball rolling. I love that, Sarah.
Right. And this way it doesn't make it overwhelming. It's like, okay, I'm not aiming for perfection
No,
here,
no,
but what I'm
no.
aiming for is, okay, I'm going to try to encourage someone today, or,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be.
Well, and I think sometimes some of us adults need to roll things back a little bit and not try and be the perfect 12 pointed, I've got every single facet of humanity put down, but let's practice one at a time.
Hmm.
And adults, I think that would be a great just to grab one of those out and practice one a day. I think that's so wonderful.
Right. I mean, this could be challenging for us too. If you're challenging your kids to take a slip of paper, I guarantee you they're going to be like, "Where is your slip of paper,
Oh,
Mom? Where is
yes.
your slip of paper, Dad?" So,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, word of warning, I guess. If you do this one, be ready to step into it as well.
Yeah, I think that's really, really wonderful. Looking for the more teenage sign. I'm a writer. I love, journals, so a lot of mine are going to be journal related. But practice forgiveness of yourself and others, right? Take a journal that you have, a special journal. This journal is just for me to reflect on things that are going on in my life, and I want to spend some time forgiving myself. I don't want to focus on all the mistakes. That thought that pops into your head at 4 o'clock in the morning that keeps you awake because that one piece of homework you forgot 2 years ago or whatever, or that one lie you told that you shouldn't have that you got in trouble for. Spend some time with the journal and just forgive yourself for it. And then take some time and forgive the other people in your life, right? Be intentional about letting things go. It makes the interactions you have with people in your life so much lighter, and also just the way that you treat yourself is so much kinder.
I love that idea. The last idea that I had was really kind of an object lesson, if you will. So you can hold up a mirror, a compact mirror, and you can show a window, and you can explain that a mirror, when you look at a mirror, you only see yourself. But a window helps you see others. And when you are a Jesus follower, when you are on Jesus's team, you are focused on loving others. And so we really, not just ourselves. And so we really want to practice looking through windows and seeing other people as Jesus would see them, instead of being just focused on ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
So
I love that. That's really, really special.
yeah.
I
And do you have any other ideas?
No, I think that kind of hit a lot of.
We gave you a lot of ideas, and I just want to remind you that this is not a laundry list of things to do. Seriously, pick one based on the age of your kids, what sounds like that it would be right up their alley. Pick one, and we'd love to hear how it goes.
Yeah.
And if this podcast has been beneficial to you, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you are on YouTube,
make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for our next episode next week.